Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Since we desire to live in a peaceful, pluralist society, we're always looking for indications of peaceful pluralism on college campuses. They're more difficult to find than they used to be. So we've talked about the new School of Civic Life that is being stood up at University of North Carolina, what Ben Sass is doing at University of Florida, the founding of this University of Austin that's in development, many other such examples, places like Hillsdale, the offerings and the approach at Hillsdale College and elsewhere. Which is why when this piece appeared in Boston Magazine a couple of weeks ago, we discussed it. This concept that a popular poli-sci professor at Tufts University, one of those elite universities, this idea that he had to offer a class in conservative thought. The idea that conservative thinkers, even conservative thinkers at equally elite universities like our friend Glenn Lowry at Brown University, that their thinking and work product should be considered as a foreign concept at so many of these places, which is why it generated the interest it did, I guess, from Boston Magazine and certainly from me. The course on conservative thought presents undergrads at Tufts with a range of conservative thinking from the Book of Genesis forward, covers a lot of ground in a hurry, for consideration. And it doesn't do the point-counterpoint, as I understand it, from the piece in Boston Magazine, because obviously you can get the counterpoint in virtually every other class. So what was the basis of said experiment, and how's it going so far? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by the professor, Eitan Hersh. He's the professor of poli-sci I mentioned at Tufts. Professor Hersh, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So the conception behind it, why challenge students with this very directed course on conservative thought?
Well, I mean, just kind of like you said, it makes people smarter if they know how to think about things from different points of view. And most of the students here are coming from a very, very progressive point of view. And so, I think they'd be interested. They generally don't get to have open conversations about topics related to religion, family, crime, all the subjects that are part of a national conversation. But I think that conversation is often stifled if they can't talk openly about different perspectives from their own, particularly from conservative perspectives. And so that was one motivation. And the other big one is that there are opportunities to learn about kind of the history of conservative thought, but not a lot to think about really contemporary issues in politics. And so that was the focus of the class.
Well, that stifling you mentioned is of course purposeful. So how did your colleagues in the poli-sci department or on campus generally react to this course you created?
Yeah, I mean, I think so far I've had very positive reactions. I think that to the extent that there's not a lot of conservative ideas on campus, it's all very subtle. It's who's hired, who's not hired, what topics of research people find, hiring committees find interesting versus what they don't find interesting. And so it's not like anyone said don't teach the class. It's just that at some point I realized that this class should be taught, and there's no one else to teach it but me. So I think that the reasons why universities like this one tend to be so homogenous are pretty complicated. It has to do with what students are recruited, what kind of signals the school sends about what kind of school it is and what kind of students it wants, and same with faculty and staff. So it's not like we want you to teach this class or not teach that class. It's just sort of the whole groundwork is established so that this kind of class doesn't usually emerge.
So during this 13-week class, do you offer liberal rebuttals to conservative thoughts?
Well, I mean, I kind of present. We want to cover a lot of ground. I mean, it's mostly public policy focused, and I really want the students to be exposed to what the conservative perspectives are, because those are really new to them. Most of the students in the class tend to be liberal. Not all. I mean, I think it's probably the most ideologically diverse room on campus, at least the most ideological one that's talking about politics. I would guess like the engineering classes are probably actually more diverse, but they don't talk about politics. So the students, I think, can access their basic sense of what the liberal or progressive view is on all these items. In fact, on many topics like affirmative action or crime or religion, they've also learned a sort of a left-leaning mindset in other courses.
So, what was surprising to you about the students' reactions as the semester wore on?
Well, I mean, it's always interesting to learn what topics students find interesting. You know, I thought that the classes on family and religion really felt quite new to the students and also quite personal. I mean, they haven't necessarily thought about what role religion has in their own lives or in what it does to benefit American society, what kind of structured families do for the benefit of mothers and fathers and of children. And so I think they were all kind of that topic felt like illicit, like they, we're not supposed to talk about this stuff, but they wanted to, and they were interested in it. And they're interested in family dynamics as they vary by economic standing. Most of the students here come from quite well-to-do families, and they've had really stable upbringings. And then when they learn that, a lot of people, particularly who haven't had college education, there's really been this tremendous breakdown of family structure. The students are interested to know why and what role public policy has had in the decline of family units. So that's just one topic, but I think it was a topic that was particularly interesting to students.
And were they more open-minded than you expected they'd be? I mean, from reading the piece, it seems like they present as like not liking people being shouted down who have opposing views, and there's ways to express your views while being respectful of people who have different views. I mean, that's some of what was highlighted in the piece, and that would, in normal times, I would say that would be rather unremarkable, but these don't seem to be very normal times, particularly on college campuses where that is more routine, even if it's not always necessarily representative of the student body as a whole. So is that a fair characterization of their general attitude, that if somebody was pro-life, they'd listen to hear him out, how whatever his or her religious views and understanding of the respect for life where that comes from, and so on and so forth, and let people finish their thought, and let's respond on point, let's avoid some of the ad hominem, those sorts of things? Is that a fair characterization of that environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because this class is like a bubble inside a bubble, right? So, I mean, the big secret of the class is that it selects for like the smartest kids in the school who want to actually engage with the debate and learn about difference.
Right.
So you have these really great students, and I think what they're realizing in the class is that much of the rest of their life on campus operates in this kind of toxic world of shutting people down who are different. We can't let a pro-life position be articulated on campus. And then, you sit in the conversation in class and you actually learn that you can have a really normal conversation about this stuff. I mean, the TA for my class was the president of the Harvard Law School's Federalist Society. And the students learn from him that, like, my TA can be just like a really nice, smart guy who gives me good feedback on my essays, and he happens to be a conservative. And like, that's new to some of these students. So, yeah, I mean, I think we are in this bubble, but sometimes particularly with the issue of Israel-Palestine that came up in the semester, and that was written about in that Boston Magazine article.
Right.
There are tensions, and our job here is to help students work through that.
Yeah, was that the most contentious issue that was tackled in the semester?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I didn't know it was going to be before the semester
Right.
started. I just thought probably like trans education or something would be the most controversial. But yeah, I mean, the issue was very hot. It was also very personal for me, so it was very just like a very difficult week or two at the beginning of that. And then we saw that we have on this campus, like many other campuses, essentially like a pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist subset of students. And so for many people on campus, they weren't aware that there is such a that there is such an extreme position articulated publicly.
Well, do you have any Jewish students, and how'd they feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, there were students just crying in their seats basically that first week when we were talking about this, and when there emerged on campus this right after the terrorist attack on October 7th, we had this student group that was celebrating basically. They were celebrating the creative strategies, they said, used by Hamas, and that student group has been prominent on campus ever since.
Yeah, and not just at Tufts, as we know. How did they react to what transpired in the Ivy League after the congressional testimony of the Claudine Gays of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because the same dynamics or the same tensions are here at Tufts as at those other schools. Tufts has the blessing of being blessing and curse of being like less prominent than Harvard, so it doesn't have the same attention from the public. But the dynamics are all the same. You have these same kinds of tensions between which communities the school leadership will bend over backwards to support and which ones not, and where that comes from, and how it gets navigated, not just among the leaders of the schools, but along low-level staff and faculty. So it's, I think it has the same complexities as the other universities, but without the same PR.
Yeah, right. What about their disposition towards America generally? And did you see that change at all over the course of the class? I mean, I think about it just in terms of race relations to use an example. So obviously you have somebody like Glenn Lowry, I mentioned at the outset, who's in his 70s. He lived through Jim Crow. He lived through and he was involved in the civil rights era, the politics of the civil rights era. He was left and he moved. So he has some standing to talk about these issues, but then also put them in the context of sort of the larger ideals of America, the American experiment, if you will. And I wonder if maybe some light bulbs went off about America as this imperfect place because it's filled with imperfect human beings, but in terms of the founding principles, the ideas, the aspirations, there's something that shouldn't be discarded so as easily as some might suggest it should.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I'm really a scholar of American politics, and so one of my weaknesses in teaching is I don't really know much about other countries, so I don't really focus too much on American exceptionalism. But what I would say is that exposing students to, say, like a number of Black conservative thinkers over the over history is very enlightening, because I think a lot of students have read a lot of perspectives that make them think that there is not that diversity of view, say, within the Black community. So, one of the early readings I assigned them, and this is just such a great thing for if your listeners are interested. Most of the students have heard of Zora Neale Hurston. There's a book called Their Eyes Are Watching God that's very commonly taught in high schools. But what most people don't know is that she was like a real conservative against a Black American, against Brown v. Board of Education, against the New Deal, and really against communism, and bristled at the idea that African American community would support Russia in the communist era. So, I sign pieces like that, and the students are really exposed to that. There are a lot of different views here, and I think that is inspiring, because it's just like it's nice to see that there are different perspectives.
And the course is going to continue?
Yeah, next fall.
All right.
I want to sign up.
Very good. Yeah, you're going to have some adults, I think, that want to come and audit the class, right?
Via Zoom.
Eitan Hersh, Professor of Poli-Sci at Tufts University. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. On AM 560. The Answer.
Easy Cater. 100,000 restaurants, one platform. Need food for a meeting or